Hi, everyone. I'm Squire's Guy. I'm your ethics guide. And I want to talk about something today that has to do with how we would describe or define the patient professional relationship in different points of time. So think of them as eras or different generations of how patients and healthcare professionals interact with one another. Before we discuss other things, I want to give this backdrop because I know it's theoretical, but it's foundational for the other things that we're going to talk about. So, the first thing I want to say is I got these models from a class I had as an undergraduate with Dr. James Walters. So, I don't know where he got these models, if they're his, if he got them from somebody else. So, this should count as my reference that these models are not mine. I'm kind of quoting them back from some source. So one of the things he said is that back in the day, medicine was paternalistic. And so the model was your doctor was your parent. They knew what you might want. And think of this as happening in the 1940s to 1970s. It was often with our grandparents' generation, at least with my generation, my grandparents, so the GI generation or the greatest generation, as dubbed by Tom Brokaw, patients did as they were told. But before we just say that, patients often had the same physician for a long time. Physicians would know multiple generations, and that means they'd often know patients' parents, as well as when they had children. So there you have three different generations that often the same physician might care for. So physicians knew what their patients' values were, and presumably they responded accordingly. That model started to change as you got into the late 70s, 80s, and the 90s. This ushered in what was called a mechanical model. So think of this as the model shifting for the silent generation, which was the generation after World War II, and was the predominant model as the baby boomers came of age. So as medicine advanced, clinicians were more and more in the role of a technician, like fixing broken parts, a technician, a mechanic type of model. Some physicians still knew their patients' values, but the selections increased, providing more choices in this case. So in the 90s and aughts, this really brought in what we would call an entrepreneurial model. And what this means is that medicine kept expanding, so did the complexity. So doctors really needed to know the business of medicine. This often shifted for the boomers and became the predominant model for Gen X and millennials. So advanced practice providers had to know the business better than any point before. In some cases, clinicians might have to compete more than ever for business. The model was still what I would call reciprocal because patients expected their clinicians to know what options are with insurance. So the next question might be, are we still in this model? Now, before I give my answer as an ethicist, I want to say I'm not judging, I'm not assigning blame. I'm trying to label, and in this case, I'm trying to label a hurdle so we can jump over that hurdle. So I'm going to argue that we are not still in the entrepreneurial model. Now, I do want to hear what model you think we might be in. But I think what makes this distinctive is I'm not sure that patients and clinicians or healthcare providers are in the same model anymore. So I would argue that clinicians are in an editorial and societal corrective model, while patients are in a consumerist deluge and displacement model. Now, what does that mean? We'll talk about it a little bit, at least my theory. Let's start with patients. So we're constantly swamped with information and people trying to get us to buy things and solutions that make our lives easier, that make our lives more affordable. we carry what we've heard into our doctor's office, into medical offices. And when dealing with a tough medical issue, we often carry our frustrations just at the medical establishment. So this could be prices, it could be the pandemic, it could be changes in insurance, reductions in coverage. We're frustrated, and we often carry that frustration into our physician or advanced practice provider. Now, let's go to clinicians. They know their stuff, but they don't have access to what we've heard. So they often find themselves in an editorial role, trying to sort through information besides the things they already know that have been validated by clinical research. So their training is always to apply the knowledge given your specific context, which the ads you've seen or the discussions you've heard or what you've seen on the internet, they don't have your specific context in mind. Also, clinicians would be the first to say that the provision of healthcare is not a commodity like buying a soccer ball for your niece and nephew. I've had people try and debate this. I would argue that major healthcare decisions are not like any other consumer commodity type thing, okay? Many, including myself, think that access to adequate healthcare is a basic human right. So this is just me. I'm curious what you think. Please let me know if you have comments about a metaphor for medicine in the current day. And we will talk soon. Thank you.